Hello and welcome to the third episode of Unlock HR with the D'Souza sisters. If we haven't met yet, I'm Desma D'Souza.
And I'm Elrona D'Souza.
And today we're going to explore an HR topic that often gets very conveniently missed out, which is onboarding. Let's get started.
Let's do it.
All right. So let's start at the very beginning, as we do. What is onboarding?
Very simple concept, but very powerful in terms of outcome. So onboarding is a period of time when an employee changes from being a candidate and a new joiner to an employee. That transition period is what we call in the HR world onboarding. So you've made an offer, this person has accepted the offer, and that's the beginning of the onboarding period. And it may end, and you have to establish when it ends, but that's the starting point. And everything that happens from that point onwards, till that person has, let's say, you feel comfortable that this person is now a contributing member and the learning curve is over, that's when the onboarding period ends.
Okay, so let's again break that down to make it simple, right? So it starts from the moment the candidate says, yes, I'm happy to accept your offer. That is the beginning of the onboarding process.
Correct.
So a lot of employers think onboarding is about just getting their visa done, and they start on the first day of work, and that's it. They are now onboarded. But we know from experience it's way more than that. So let's maybe talk about that initial period of what needs to happen in the first few weeks, and what is and why it's impactful.
Definitely. So onboarding period, I would say, to help us navigate through that, I would put that into phases, right?
Okay.
So from the time they onboard to the time they join, or the first day of work, I call that pre-boarding, or before the first day of work. So that period is very critical to manage in a way that is not, that brings the candidate through the journey of being excited about joining you when they sign the offer to finally showing up at work with just as much, if not more, excitement.
Yeah.
Because you have to remember the candidate could be at a different stages of their life when they've accepted your offer. It could be that they are leaving an employer that they've enjoyed working with and are like in the process of having to say goodbye to a team they know very well, etc. They could be in a process where they've lost a job and they're now excited about joining. So they could be having different life experiences over there, and here you are waiting for them to join you. So managing that period will make sure that they come in with the right frame of mind and with the best step forward. So that is what I call pre-boarding, and there's many different things you got to do there. Yes, there's a lot of work to be done to prepare for the visa part, but equally it's about giving them a sense of what to expect when they join, how to come prepared, what things to look for, who is their hiring manager if they haven't met them yet, etc., etc. Can help build that excitement. So that pre-boarding should have a balance of what you need from a legal compliance point of view, as well as building that employment experience or that excitement.
Yeah, so you could almost divide it into two, right?
Yes.
One is the legal side of it, and one, making sure that they're legal to work with you. And the second one is just creating that welcoming experience before getting them excited and almost, convincing them that validating that they have made the right decision that they've chosen to work with you.
Yeah.
And creating that excitement for them to start and join on day one.
Yeah.
Right? So now let's say they start on day one. There's also there's the preparation of for the employee of what to expect, etc., etc. But also in the workplace, employers need to prep for what that day one looks like. And that day one is so important. And I always say you only get one chance to make a great first impression.
Absolutely.
So get it right.
Yes. And so just going back to the pre-boarding, we've talked about creating that welcoming experience, following the legal compliance, but also there's a back-end process that you need to follow, is being ready to have that employee join you.
Yeah.
You know, and the more you do that before they start, the better that first impression will be. So having things like a workstation ready for them, having the equipment that they need to be working on, whether it's a laptop or a desktop, whatever that might be. Just by creating that space, they feel like they actually belong from day one.
Yeah.
Rather than, you know, having to say, oh, your laptop is coming, that just does not set the right tone. And I think you gave an example sometime before, is like you're coming into a hotel to
Yeah.
start your experience, but you're waiting to at the reservation and they're like, oh, your room's not ready
At the
yet.
reception
At the
too.
reception, and you say your room is not ready yet. And that just does not sit well, you know, that's not the best foot forward, I would say, or not help the candidate become an employee. And you have to make sure that that nervousness that they have about like new space, new beginnings, new employer needs to be turned into excitement
Yeah.
and feeling at ease again. If you take from the recruitment time, again, that ease has to kind of grow and they feel like they've made that right choice and the right move to progress their career with your organization.
Right. So again, coming back to that day one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like think about what the experience should be. What's a good experience to have? So I'd say it's, for instance, making sure that the line manager is there on day one. Like you said, having a workstation ready.
Yes.
You know, maybe even taking the employee out for like a cup of coffee or something in the morning, to instead of just like sitting them at their desk and giving them a bunch of manuals to say, here you go, read this and familiarize yourself. You know, maybe even doing a team lunch if it's a new member on the team, maybe a welcome team lunch so that everybody gets to hang out casually and it's, you know, you actually integrate them right from the beginning. Another thing that I, you know, would advocate is not to give them, you know, not to just make it very paper heavy,
Yeah.
to make it actually like an experience.
Exactly.
And if you go back to the analogy that I always use, which is, you know, imagine going to a hotel and you're at reception and they know you're expected on that day, you know you're expected on that day, and you're waiting in reception and they're like, oh yeah, your room is getting ready, but you don't enjoy that experience because you can see that this employer is not prepared to receive you.
Yeah, and throughout that process that you explained, right? That employee um, is watching everything that's happening to them. Those interactions matter, and as much as you can prepare for it, the first day will be just as much as exciting as possible. And integrating all those recommendations that you made, I think, is you know, one of the best practices. A story comes to mind. There was, when I was working for a company, we were all sitting in an open plan office. There was a person expected to join, and this person came in and just sat at the table. The table was empty and was just waiting. And I walk into the office because my work starts, and I'm like, can I help you? Like, I didn't know if she was a visitor. I didn't know if, and I was sitting in the next table, and nobody even told me as a you know, person sitting, like, what's happening here. She said, oh, I'm starting today. It's like, oh, okay. But the manager was not there to receive her. Nobody, she just sat at that place. Somebody from HR picked her up and said, okay, this is your desk. Just wait when the manager comes.
Haram.
So she was like, and she didn't know where to get a coffee from. She didn't know whether she could have a coffee. She
Yeah.
didn't know, you know, where the restrooms were. She didn't know how to navigate
Yeah.
that at all. And I'm being in HR, I'm sitting next to her. Somebody could have, you know, told me that, oh, you're having somebody's new, starting new, the manager's not here. Can you just show us around? I'd be happy to do that. But it took me by surprise
Yeah.
that there was some new person sitting there. So I took that initiative and helped this person. You know, we went and got coffee together. We went downstairs and, you know, showed her the different floors of where the offices are, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. And she, till today, whenever we meet, she's like, I'll never forget, like, you just made me feel so comfortable.
Yeah.
And like for half an hour, I was like, what have I done? I came from an organization that, you know, would give me manicures and pedicures on Women's Day, and here nobody's even here to receive me. Like, I thought I was coming and joining a great company, but this is not a great first experience.
Yeah, I remember one of my own onboarding experiences, right? And this was the pre-boarding that you were saying. So I signed the offer letter,
Okay.
and I got a call from the employer to say like, okay, you're joining on, like, at that time we used to work Sunday, so it was like, come in on Sunday, and it said come in at 7:30. And I was like, okay, sure. I was very excited. And then the next day, someone else called me from HR in that company to say like, hi, I'm calling from this company, and I'm very pleased to say that, you know, you have been selected for this position, and we have, and I'm like, I've already signed an offer, so like, what am I missing?
Oh, wow.
So then I said like, I've signed an offer, and that person literally put me on hold. And when I say put me on hold, I think he just covered the phone.
Okay.
And I could hear him screaming to someone in the background, and he's like, hey, so okay, apparently she's already signed an offer. And then I can hear that person saying like, oh yeah, just tell her to start on Sunday. So then he's like, oh, sorry, I made a mistake. You know, this call is to ask you, like, to tell you that you're starting on Sunday. So I was like, okay, fine. That's great. I'll see you on Sunday. And he's like, oh, come in at 10 o'clock. And I was like, oh, but I was told to come in at 7:30. And he's like, really? Okay, hold. And then again, he covered the phone, and he's like, hey, someone called her and told her to start at 7:30. And then that person on the other side was like, yeah, that's fine, but tell her it's a first day so she can come in a bit late. And that was my
Such mixed messages.
yeah, I was like, what is going on, right? So anyways, the day arrives, and I show up at 7:30. You know, no one wants to show up late
Yeah.
on their first day. So I show up at 7:30, and no one was in the office.
Empty office.
It was empty. I think there was one person. So I was that person. I walked in, and there was this person at her desk, and I think her style was that she would just come in early to get prepared, and she looked up at me, and she's like, yes. And I'm like,
The
hi.
same thing.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, hi, I'm due to start today. And she was like, really? Okay, have a seat. And I literally just sat there for the next 2-3 hours, and people started coming into work, and everyone just went to their desks, and they started getting busy, and as if I was invisible, right? And so this was back in my early days when I didn't even know what to expect myself, and I just thought like, okay, maybe this is how it is,
Yeah.
or maybe I was the weirdo who didn't didn't take offense to how I was treated. But that, you know, like that was not ideal. And then cut to my next organization where I had, I got this really wonderful email. I was contacted by the onboarding team. I had a really nice, like, welcoming email. And I very clearly remember she said, you know, the team are excited to meet you.
What a lovely sentence
Yeah,
to
very,
receive,
very
right?
sweet. And then one of my team was actually waiting downstairs in the lobby. And she introduced herself, and she said, hey, I'm whoever X, and I'm here to, I'm your buddy. And I'm going to, be your point of contact through the day. So she took me up. She was one of my team. She took me upstairs. She walked me to the room that the orientation was going to happen in. It was like a mother taking her child to the first day of class. She introduced me to the person who was leading the orientation. She took me to my desk, showed me around. The other members of the team were there. She quickly walked me around to say, if you want to get a cup of coffee, you can do this. You can, and then at the time also, like, my desk was not with the rest of my team because I think they were reorganizing. And she told me, she said, I'm really sorry, we have to like keep you here. But then by the time you finish your orientation, you can start, you'll join the rest of the team. Is that okay? And I was like, yeah, of course, that's fine. Just the fact that she did all of this, even made some a miss, it was fine. And another cute thing was my line manager was not available to receive me, but he wrote me a note and he stuck it on the desk to say,
how
like, I'm
nice.
really sorry I'm not here to meet you, but welcome, we're so glad to have you. And not just that, right? Other people in the department also knew that I was coming, like the other leadership. So as I was walking through the office, I was, being introduced to other leaders, and they all knew me on a first name basis. They were like,
Oh,
"Oh,
wow.
we have been waiting for you, and
Oh, how
we're
nice.
it's so nice that you finally here, and we're very excited." And it just made me feel absolutely incredible. What a
Oh,
contrasting
everybody should
experience.
have that onboarding experience. I
Yeah.
feel like that's a dream
Like,
scenario of an onboarding.
yeah,
Especially if, let's say, somebody you have hired has resigned, canceled the visa, and done all of that, ready to start, and they come to this where it's an empty office, or they come to where somebody is welcoming them. Like, which one would really,
yeah.
make them, carry on and give their best to that
And
organization?
I was that person that you said, like you don't know what stage of their life is. And I actually left an organization that I was very happy with. I had great employment experiences. And everyone told me I was crazy for leaving that organization and joining some new place. And, they would have probably in my mind at the time, I would have been wondering if I made the right decision. But those first couple of days, I was like a, kid in a candy store. I was like, wow, everything is so, everything is so like warm and fuzzy. And
Yeah.
it was like unfamiliar because it was not the culture that I was coming from, but it was also like I really felt welcomed.
Yeah.
And another thing that I also remember is when I was in this orientation, right, some random members of the company just popped by the orientation room, and they were like peeping in. And when the trainer was like, they're like, "Oh, we know that, Sundays is when all the new joiners start." So
Oh,
we just
nice.
kind of swung by to say hi. And like those little touches made such a huge
Yeah,
difference.
and these things that you are talking about can easily be replicated in a small business as well.
Exactly.
It does not have to need an onboarding team. It doesn't need to have a buddy. You just have to, dedicate some of your time to just create that experience for this new joiner. And tomorrow that new joiner might help another new joiner. So, you can play tag team that way. And it's simple things. We actually have a onboarding checklist in our free resource download. Please go and like pick it up, download it, and use that as a guide for you to help make that onboarding experience for your new members much better.
Exactly.
And
I'll put it in the show notes below. So just go to our resource library on our website, and you can have it for free as a gift
yes,
from us.
yes. So yeah, so this is where we want to do something for the small business owners to make it, as always, simple to build some good best practices from a people management perspective. And the reason why we do this is just to make sure that they have the right tools to help them grow their business and get the right team on board.
What is the cost of getting this wrong?
Mega. So again, the cost is not evident at first, right? Life goes on. You think, okay, yeah, this is fine. We'll get over it. There's a lot of repeat work. There's a lot of chances that the candidate will leave. And
Now, employee.
now, new joiner, employee,
Yeah.
exactly. But the chances of somebody leaving because of a poor onboarding experience is record high. And this is again documented statistics across the world. A poor onboarding results in a poor hire. And what happens is that this is often reflected in their work output as well, because they're slow to pick up on things
Yeah.
and they're slow to deliver because they're still having reservations about the decision that they've made. But cut to your experience of this welcoming, inviting atmosphere, and that person will get started like right away. They'll just blossom in some places in
Yeah.
an environment like that.
In that same company, right? Like, so in that first week, we were done by about, I think, 2 or 3 in the
Okay.
afternoon, because they didn't want to make it a hectic day. And because it was such a great experience, I felt a tad bit guilty for being able to go home early. So I sat till the end of the workday, and I, like asked for what else can I do? And there were some online trainings and things that we needed to get done. And I'm like, that's fine. I'll just, do it. I didn't have to. They said you can go home early, but I chose to, to conduct myself in a way that I could be most productive. So when I finished that session or that week, orientation week, and I started on the job, I could like hit the ground running really, because I felt like they were being so nice to me. So it's only fair that I am respectful and I don't take advantage of that time.
Yeah, and that was your own initiative, right? And many employees have exhibited the same sort of response to a welcoming experience. They may take the cue of leaving early, but the next day when they go up, you should see the sparkle in their eyes when you have the right onboarding experience. And the way, they interact with colleagues, the team building that happens through that experience
Yeah.
is so much stronger than having somebody just, placed on an empty workstation and expect them to figure their way around. They
Yeah.
will eventually, because humans are very resourceful. So they'll figure things out. But, when you do things deliberately that will help in, easing that process, you cannot imagine the results. Often intangible, but over a period of time, it's easily measured.
Yeah. And what is the difference? Let's talk about the difference rather between onboarding and orientation.
Good one, yeah. So onboarding sits above, orientation is part of onboarding. So there's an element of onboarding where you take some time to walk your employee or your new joiner through your company, and that part is called orientation. So a little bit about the leadership, a little bit about the company, the vision, the mission, etc. They break it down in terms of how it impacts them. So they give you a little more than what's just on a website. And that should be something that should be in an orientation deck. Equally, it's all those hygiene factors in terms of what to do when you have an emergency. It covers things about how to report an incident and so on and so forth. More than that, it also gives you fair understanding about the contract that you have signed for, so the paperwork that you might have signed for. Now it's the chance to explain that contractual term. So working hours, leave, days off, attendance, all of these things
Yeah.
will become part of the orientation. Also the technology that you have in your organization, whether it is what systems they'll be using, what are the communication channels, all of that can be compressed into an orientation session that will help somebody understand a little more than what they would have, got just by conversations at the water fountain.
Yeah.
And this is even more important when you have remote teams, because they have no visibility of your office. They are, sitting somewhere else, cafe or at their home, and that orientation will give them that connection they need to that organization.
Yeah, I think this is a great segue into that, right? Because remote working is now the new normal. And a lot of businesses onboard team members that work remotely, even small businesses,
Yeah.
right? So how can hiring managers or business owners ensure that the remote worker as well also has a positive experience, because they obviously can't be there in the office to welcome them on day one, right?
Yeah, and onboarding is an experience. It's not something that is necessarily done in the four walls of an office. It's how
Yeah.
you make that employee feel. Sometimes you can do it face to face in person because that's the environment, but you can use other communication channels. You will have the opportunity to, engage with that. Send them the material in advance so that they have it on day one. Give them a call on day one, talk to them, have that orientation, book some meetings. All of those things will make that person feel welcome. It's not that they're waiting at their on day one for things to happen, and
Yeah.
it doesn't happen. So preparation will be very key to making sure that your remote team is very happily onboarded, and also making time for that person, like sitting with them, having sessions, talking to them about it, going through the role, talking about the organization, having some other members of the team, have a team meeting with them, or have one-to-one sessions with other team members. All of this will help in the onboarding experience for a remote team.
So you can also have like a virtual coffee with the team, for
Exactly.
instance, or
Yeah.
virtual lunch or something like that. But maybe you can even do like a welcome message from the team members. They can record something to say welcome to the team. So like there's lots of options to be creative, right?
Exactly.
Like you
You could,
don't have
yeah.
to follow just the what is typically done.
Yeah, don't just look at the constraints because, oh, this person's not here, so what do we do? Look, be creative and think about how you would like to be,
Yeah.
welcomed when you're away from that. What would be nice, and just, apply that. You could even send them a gift voucher for a lunch and then share it with the team.
Yeah,
and
I like that.
all of that, those options are there. And these are like low cost, quick wins and, sort of solutions to have.
Yeah, I like that. But then again, I'd like any.
You like food,
free,
right?
I'd love a free lunch. Sign me up for that. Doesn't matter where. What are some of the common boo-boos or mistakes that employers make when it comes to getting onboarding wrong? I can think of one straight away, right? One is that they don't do it. They go from you start on day one and here start working straight away. Like they don't take time to create a welcoming experience.
Yeah, that's the first boo-boo. And even if they stay there onboarding, they're not very structured and they're not very prepared to receive somebody. And we've given it that example of somebody just arriving at work and being put to a desk. So that's a typical boo-boo because they're like, oh, we will giving things as they happen because things are not ready. When things are not ready, you're not being the most welcoming host. And that is
Yeah.
a boo-boo. You have to be, as a host, you need to be prepared to receive your guest, and your new joiner is your guest, is not still a household member yet.
Yeah. How long should onboarding last?
So onboarding this is again where the HR term of it depends happen, right? Because every business has different business cycles and every employee's journey also depends on that business cycle. And a typical example is if you're in a fast-paced environment, or if your business has a quicker turnaround, like you're not working on a 3-4 year sales cycle, for instance, or other business cycles, then onboarding might be a little longer. But typically what happens is you have the pre-boarding phase, which is the beginning of the onboarding. You have things that happen in the first week and normally till the end of a probation period. This is generally what HR professionals as a minimum consider as an onboarding period. But sometimes it can go up to even a year because there are so many new things they will learn in a year, like their performance management system perhaps. They might have to go through the leave process and familiar. So the entire journey from being a new joiner to a household member, they have mapped it for a year.
Do you think that's a bit of overkill though, like a whole year?
I think for a small business, a year is a lot of time, but to manage onboarding period from pre-boarding to the end of probation is a reasonable time to map their onboarding experience with.
And probation over here is typically 3 or 6 months.
Exactly. So it could be 3 months and confirmed early or up to 6 months. And that doesn't mean that, they have to have the initial welcoming experience and it's just about that. You have to kind of move on. You have to talk about how they're, after the first month, sit with them, have a one-to-one, say, how have you settled in? Is there any challenges?
Yeah.
What can we do?
Like a check-in.
That's exactly like a check-in. And then month 2 could be like, how are you doing against your role? Do you have any questions? What development, what support do you need? Or tell them, give them some constructive feedback if that's what is needed, so that they can then go back and, start working on it. And then when you arrive at month 3, you can see the transition happening. There's more of self-initiative, or there could be more of where the employee has a better understanding of the business. So they are, coming more with solutions and less with problems, or lack of awareness becomes to lack of more of knowledge.
You can see that transition. Oftentimes, from 3 months onwards, you see the majority of a new joiner towards an employee.
Yeah.
This is why also I think 3 months to 6 months is what the UAE labor law has been, has called a probation period, because a lot can be achieved and a lot can be measured in 6 months' time.
Yeah. I was talking about my amazing onboarding experience. And I think one of the things that made it also really amazing was I had a buddy. And a buddy was assigned to me, and that buddy's role was literally just to check in with me on a regular basis. That was separate to my line manager checking in with me. My line manager was leading a team of, I think we were about 7 or 8 at that time, but this buddy was assigned to me. My buddy was from my team, but in the business we had buddies assigned across teams, right? And what was really beautiful about it was everyone had gone through these similar experiences.
Yes.
So they were able to share with their, so they were able to handhold this new person. And you can do this in a small business as well.
Absolutely. Like, if you have a team of 20, 30, there are people that you can give the responsibility of being a buddy. You know your team close enough to know who is that person that can warmly and, represent your company just as much as you would.
Yeah.
And will give that employee, like, sometimes a line manager is a line manager, right? So you think that all your interactions, they're watching you, assessing you because you're still on probation, etc. But a buddy will give you that ease and that comfort that this person is genuinely interested in me getting more and more familiar with my surroundings. So it takes the pressure off the line manager, because otherwise the line manager has to do everything for this employee. And as well as it starts building other relationships, which you will see when work gets done, they can call upon those relationships to help move works if they're stuck or, some things like that happen.
Yeah. But I also want to say that, just because someone's a good buddy, like, don't only assign that person to be everyone's buddy, right? Because then suddenly they're like, hey, you've just given me a new job, day job, which is, they should be excited about it. So everyone should there should be some sort of fairness in how this is assigned.
And also I would say, like, new joiners, just if you do get a buddy, please be respectful of their time, because they do have a day job.
Exactly.
So you have to kind of, go with something that is quite critical and, and find ways to solve things yourself. Like, if your company has an employee handbook, read the employee handbook, understand, and maybe ask questions rather than saying, oh, how do I go and get leave, for instance? There's a handbook, refer to it. Use those tools to your benefit.
Exactly. Right. So I think we've covered the onboarding part of the employee life cycle. Do you think there's anything that we've missed?
Yeah. So maybe on the onboarding side, we talk about how the employees can benefit from onboarding. Like, what should they look for? Okay. So if you're coming into a new organization, how do you take ownership of your own onboarding, which you can, right?
Yes.
Because there's a lot of work that the company we are recommending that they do, but equally as an employee, performance is something that you have to own. So from that direction, ask questions when you don't know something or you are unfamiliar with. It is absolutely fine to ask questions. So I think that's definitely something that we should empower employees to do, is to be able to ask questions freely, and so that we can give them some answers. If you don't have, if the job description is not provided, ask for these things and, like, take ownership of these activities. Similarly, when you're talking about visa process and when you're talking about all of that, understand the process and give the time needed for that process to come to fruition. Having a sense of urgency is great, but, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes you probably are not aware of. So, ask questions, but also understand that there's a lot that happens behind the scenes as well. So that awareness is also great. And if you've changed jobs before, then the typical journey that you have to go through. So make your own checklists and, help yourself in terms of making yourself comfortable in this new environment.
Exactly. I always say, like, own your own employability.
Exactly.
You can't just be in victim mode and say, I wasn't given this, but also do you ask?
Yeah. And I wasn't given both ways. Exactly. I wasn't given this has merit to some extent, but what is your self-initiative? What is your contribution? How have you asked the question and not got an answer? That's a different.
Yeah. So then should we do like a rapid fire wrap up?
Yes.
Of maybe 5 key takeaways?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, go for it.
So 5 for me and 5 for you?
No. Let's do 5. I don't know that I'll be able to come up with 10.
Okay. So for me, I think the first thing is to plan the onboarding just as much as you plan anything else when it comes to your organization and your business. And think about the phases that we spoke about, the pre-boarding, the onboarding period. So before joining and what happens after joining.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I just want to build on that to say, if you prepare once, you can just kind of repeat the process, right?
Yes.
You don't have to exercise brain power every single time.
yeah.
Number two, another key takeaway for me is onboarding experience has a direct correlation to retention.
Yes.
Get that right, and you'll retain your best talent because, like I always say, talent has options. Okay, number three.
Number 3 is be prepared to receive your new joiners. Have the workstation and have the basic equipment ready for them. Use the checklist that we have as a free resource download to help you get there.
Yeah. Number four, onboarding doesn't end on day one. It lasts, like, give it some time. Make sure that the employee has, in fact, assimilated into the organization, and have regular check-ins, like an ideal check-in. What's not process, but timeline to follow is
Yeah.
like 15, 30, 45 days.
Yes.
To make sure that they have, they're now, like I said, assimilated into the organization. That's number four.
And number 5 is take some time to do a proper orientation for employees that are joining so that they get to know about your company in advance so that they're prepared for any, events that happen after that.
Yeah. And that's a wrap for today's episode. We really hope that you found these insights useful. Remember, you only get one chance to make a great first impression, so please take the time to get it right. Oh, and one more thing. If you found at least one tip useful, please share it with someone in your community, perhaps a small business owner that can benefit from this episode.
And if you've liked our episode, one more request is to please leave a review and tell us how we're doing and where we can improve.
Join us next time on another episode of Unlock HR with the D'Souza sisters, where we'll be uncovering a new topic in HR.
Ciao.